Liberals are calling it an execution. But watch closely. Frame 24. There's a blade in the...
All right, before we even get into the law, I want us to kill the BS on both sides, because both sides are lying to you in different ways. Now, the left keeps saying that there were conflicting commands, but on video, all we hear is the same command repeated. Get out of the vehicle, get out of the vehicle. There's no chaos. There's no confusion about what the officer is demanding, and there's only one officer giving commands. Now, the right keeps calling this woman a terrorist when there is literally zero evidence of terrorism. None. Not in the video, not before the video, not after the video. The right wing is just making this up, and it goes all the way to the top, the president and senior administration officials. The left says that she never hit the officer, but the video clearly shows either contact or very close call. Pretending otherwise just hurts credibility. And that's a vector for the right-wing propagandists to jump in and say the left, your whole argument is just a lie. Now, the right says she tried to run him over, but we don't see acceleration, targeting, or intent to hit. We see a car that is creeping very, very slowly and turning. The right also brings up the fact that she's a lesbian, right? They're bringing up her sexuality. And if you're thinking about the sexuality of a dead woman, a mother, instead of the legality of the shooting, you need to take a step back. Now, the left says that the shots came from the side. They say all the shots came from the side when there is literally a bullet hole in the windshield. And Trump says the officer was, quote unquote, run over, when the officer is on video, clearly not run over and clearly not seriously justified. So if you actually care about the truth, you have to throw out all of that and start with what the video actually shows. So here we go. Here's what I'm saying. Here's why I'm saying all of this first. Because there are people who say they're breaking down, quote unquote, both sides, but when you actually listen closely, they only challenge one side. They'll tell you what the left is saying and then tear it apart, point by point. But when the government or the right says something, it just gets accepted as the starting point. That's not neutral. That just feels neutral if you're not paying attention. And that's what I want to talk about. That is the next topic of this video. What exactly are we arguing about? So I watched Nate, the lawyer's video on the ICE shooting. And, you know, look, I'm not doing this to, quote unquote, cancel the guy. I'm not doing this because he's a right-wing person or whatever. I'm doing this because he's presenting himself like the, quote unquote, the objective legal guy. And in my view, he's not doing that. He's doing something entirely different. So I'm going to be fair. He gets some things right. I'm going to say that also, right? When he's right, I'm going to admit it. When he's wrong, I'll admit that. But if you're claiming that you're neutral, then you have to be neutral the whole way. You cannot only be skeptical of the left and then treat the government story like it's basically the gospel. That is not neutral. That's, I'm on a team and I'm pretending that I'm not. So everybody keeps screaming murder or justified. It's left or right, black or white. Murder or justified. Those are the two arguments. But we need to slow down and define what we're talking about like adults. When people say, quote unquote, murder, they usually mean, quote unquote, that was wrong and he should go to jail. But legally, murder is a very specific thing. It's not just someone died. That's killing, right? My position is based on what we see right now. It is based on what I see right now. My position is basically that this is negligent homicide or manslaughter. So that's where I would go. I know in some of my first videos, I am human, I'm not perfect, and I wasn't pushing things to this level of legality like in this video, because this video is a response to Nate, the lawyer's video. So I'm taking it to the ultimate levels of legality as best I can, because I'm not an actual lawyer, right? So previously I had said it was murder, but when I really take things to the maximum level in terms of legal standards, I can't justify murder. I have to say that it is manslaughter or negligent homicide. Let's talk about Nate's big tell. So there's a clear pattern in Nate's video. If the left says something, he's like, hold up, spin, deception, right? Only showing one angle, right? He points out that they only show one angle. If the government says something, he's like, yep, that's basically what happened. That's the whole problem. Because government officials, in this case, were out there calling this woman a terrorist, basically convicting her in the public before the investigation even plays out. And I'm sorry, if you're a legal person and you care about fairness, and that should set off alarm bells immediately. Like, that should be one of the first things out of your mouth. How can you be a lawyer that, your job is to represent people and to see that justice is served and fairness and justice is blind, and you're going to comment about this case and not comment at all about one of the biggest red flags and the biggest atrocities of all of this in terms of how it's being handled, which is the way the government is responding and the blatant lies that they're telling. I mean, for you to have a problem with random people on the left saying stuff, but not address what the president himself said and what, key members of the Department of Justice are saying in terms of violating the key principles of our justice system. I mean, as a lawyer, that just really says a lot. Now, because you're not supposed to, one of the big problems with this is you're not supposed to poison the well, right? You're not supposed to prime the public with the terrorist label before the facts are nailed down. Nate barely treats that like a problem. He just kind of moves on. So he's skeptical when a YouTuber does propaganda, but he's not skeptical when the state does propaganda, at least not demonstrated by what he said in his video. That's backwards. That doesn't make any sense, especially for someone who works in the legal profession. Now, I'm going to be fair here, and I'm going to admit that Nate was 100% correct when he called out the liberal propagandist Brian Tyler Cohen. I've called him out in many of my videos. He called him out for only showing one angle, even though he admits he's aware that there's other angles, but he just says to the audience, all the other angles basically say the same thing. Rather than showing the audience, he's just telling them what to think. This is a Jacob Blake type situation once again, right? A lot of people on the left showed one angle that made the officer look the worse, and the 911 recording, as well as the second camera angle, you didn't really see it being covered on left-wing channels because it went against the narrative, right? They were intentionally hiding half of the story to mislead their audience. Now, I would argue that the right wing was being far more dishonest about many, many things, but it's not a competition about who can be more dishonest than the other. I'm just telling it like it is, right? And yes, this is dishonest. This is basically the same thing we saw with Jacob Blake, right? The media will show you one clip that fits, that sort of fits the story that they want, and they'll conveniently not show the other context. And that changes how people read what's happening. That's manipulation. So Nate is 100% right. If someone is only showing one angle and acting like no other angle matters, that is deception. But here's where Nate goes past that. So Brian Tyler Cohen is basically hiding information. Nate manufactures a narrative, meaning he's not just saying, here's another angle. He's taking that angle and then telling you what you should see. And he's talking disputed things and presenting them like as if they're settled facts. That's different. And in fact, in his video, I demonstrated that he actually misled his audience by pretending like the ICE officer was just standing in front of the car as the car moved in front of him, even though Nate's own video, you can tell that the officer was walking because you can see the ground moving the entire time. But then Nate freezes the video to further emphasize this idea that the officer was standing. So that's manipulation. That goes beyond just hiding stuff. Now you're manufacturing things. Now, Nate says that people are saying the officer placed himself in front of the car. That's not accurate. The car repositioned and pointed at him. That's Nate's words, right? He's saying the car repositioned and pointed at him, as opposed to the officer putting himself in a dangerous position. Now, let's say that's true. That still dodges the real issue. The real issue, in my view, is why is the officer even hanging out at the front corner of a running car at all while recording video? Because regular people know this. You don't stand in front of a running vehicle, period. Even if the danger isn't evil, even if the driver isn't a quote-unquote terrorist, even if the driver is your grandma, right? Because the car could be in drive, foot on the brake, and somebody slips, or they panic, or they're distracted, or they hit the gas by mistake, or they don't even realize, right? It's just plain stupidity to be standing in front of a running car, especially if it's the person in the driver's seat is someone who you're later going to consider to be a terrorist. If you think these people are domestic terrorists, then why are you so comfortable not only standing in front of the vehicle, but you're recording video at the same time, which is a distraction? So when Nate argues, it's like, well, the officer didn't step in front of the car on purpose. He's kind of playing a word game. The question isn't, did he step in front like a cartoon character? The question is, did he keep himself in a stupid, dangerous position and then use deadly force to solve the danger that he helped create? That's negligence. That is recklessness. And Nate does not want to sit in that question because it hurts the defense case. So rather than acting like a neutral observer informing his audience, Nate is functioning as if he was paid by the defense to steer public opinion in his favor. Was he paid? I don't know. I'm not making that accusation. Is he acting like he was? Certainly. Do I think he was? I don't think so. Nate leans on this idea like you can't use hindsight. you can't say he could have moved, right? That's the idea he's presenting. And look, I get what he's trying to say. You can't judge a split-second decision like you had 5 minutes and a whiteboard. That's just not the way it works in reality. But this is where people get tricked. Saying, quote unquote, there's no hindsight does not mean no criticism. And it definitely doesn't mean ignore policy and training. Now, because a lot of the departments literally train officers, do not shoot at moving vehicles if you can step away. Step away. Get out of the kill zone. Don't turn a moving car into an excuse to shoot. So when Nate says it's not about, quote unquote, what could have been done, that's not fully honest. Because part of the whole reasonableness question is what options were right there in front of him. And clearly moving out of the way was an option because he did it. And he wasn't seriously injured. So he had that option and he used it. He moved away and shot. Right? One option is very obvious in that situation, and that's move. And he realized it himself because he moved. Right? Now, people on the left love to focus on the second and third shots. That's because their arguments are strongest there, of course. So I get it. But, this is because after the car starts moving away, those shots get harder and harder to defend. Nate's defense is they're grouped close together, trained to stop the threat. That is how they're trained. And there's some kernel of truth to what he's saying. Sure. That will be said in court. But here's the problem. Training is not magic. Training doesn't erase reality. If the car is already angling away and you're already stepping away, then the argument becomes, what threat are you stopping? And of course, if you shoot a driver that's driving towards you, that doesn't stop them from driving towards you. And this is why I'm not comfortable calling it a clean, justified shooting. What do I think the officer should be charged with? What is my actual position? So my position is not, this guy is a bloodthirsty psycho. That would be a liberal argument. My position is, this was a criminal screw-up that killed someone. He created a dangerous situation by recording video instead of keeping his hands ready, staying at the front corner of a running car. Idiot move. Buffoonery. Basically hanging around in the one place you should not be. Then he got startled and he killed her. That's manslaughter or negligent homicide, in my view, but I'm not an attorney, unlike Nate. Now, this is not because he had an intent from the start. It's because he was reckless, and his recklessness got someone killed. And I want to touch one thing people keep dancing around. And I'm not going to exaggerate it, but I'm also not going to pretend it doesn't matter. On video, immediately after the shooting, he calls her a bitch. It's not a report. That's not a rumor. That's on camera. It's on video. Does that prove he planned to kill her? No. And I'm not going to lie and say it does. But does it matter? Yeah, it does. Because if you just shot someone and your first reaction is anger and insults instead of, holy shit, someone's been shot, that tells us something about your headspace in that moment. And then there's what we also see on video. No urgency to help. He walks up to the car, he walks away, call 911. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly what he's allowed to do after a shooting. There are rules about securing the scene, weapons, and all that. Fine. But again, this isn't about turning this into first-degree murder. It goes to recklessness. It goes to loss of control. This supports negligence in the moment, not predetermination, not execution, negligence. And that matters when you're deciding what this actually was. It matters. So here's my bottom line. Nate is correct to call out the left-wing media when they hide angles and act like context doesn't matter. But Nate does the same type of thing in the opposite direction. He challenges the critics hard, but he treats the government's story like it's the default truth. And on top of that, he builds this narrative where the officer is basically passive and the car is the sole aggressor, the weaponized car, while not seriously grappling with the obvious. The officer's reckless positioning and choices. If you want to be neutral, you don't get to just hunt for left-wing spin. Start your video mentioning the right is saying this and the left is saying that, but then all your challenges are at the left. The way to do it is you hunt for everyone's spin, especially the people in power. As a public defender, I would think Nate would know this. And if you do that here, a clean, quote-unquote, good shot is not where you land. You land where I land, which is negligence. Negligent homicide or manslaughter. That's what all the evidence that we see so far should lead you to. Until, of course, we get more information from a full investigation, if that ever happens. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. What are your thoughts? Is this video off base? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Do you think it's murder, manslaughter, negligent homicide? Does it matter to you the legalities of what happened? Or are you only concerned about justice and what you feel is morally correct?